Okay, welcome back. This is chapter 6. We're going to go over the graphical user interface in this video. And in the next video, we'll talk about object-oriented design. So in this video, we're going to cover the basics of GUI components, so the graphical user interface components. We're going to explore how these components, JFrame, JLabel, JTextField, and button work, and then become familiar with the concept of event-driven programming. We're going to look at different events and event handlers, and then we're going to stop there with this particular video. And then we'll come back and talk about object-oriented design, objects, classes, and members of classes. Okay. So when you have a graphical user interface, the nice thing about it is that you can see your inputs and your outputs all at the same time. So you have a window where you have text boxes and you have buttons. You can push the button, see the output. You can enter the input in any order that you want. So, if you have 3 text boxes, you can decide in which order you enter those values. You can change the values in the windows, in those text boxes, if you wish, and then you can click a button to get your output. So just think about when you're on the internet and you fill out a form. When you're filling out a form, you can decide in what order you fill everything in, just that you fill everything that's required. So it doesn't have to be a certain order, and you can go back and edit your form. So here's how a window would look like. And so the components of that we see here of the Java graphical user interface is that we have something called a label. And so labels are always going to go in front of text fields, of JText fields. So this is where the person enters the input. This is the label so that they know what they're supposed to be entering. In this label also, you could show an example of how the value is supposed to be formatted. Then you have here you have JFrame. So JFrame is the window itself. Okay, so that's JFrame. We have label, we have text fields, and then we have buttons. So those are our GUI components. So inside a content pane, so that would be like the box, the window, we're going to have our labels, our text boxes, our text areas, and our buttons. And then here it's just talking about how our picture element is in pixels. Okay, so in the windows, they can be created using a JFrame object. So we've talked about objects and classes. And so the JFrame is going to be the object that we're going to be using. The class JFrame provides various methods to control the attributes of a window. So if you look on page 333, it's going to have JFrame, and it's going to tell you this is used when an object of type JFrame is instantiated and the window is created without any title. So, so the class JFrame provides various methods to control the attributes of a window. So what would be the attributes? So the attributes of a window would be things like what title do I want on the window, and what's the width and the height of a window. Now, hopefully you saw the previous video that I provided from somebody else where they talked about the example of a car, and you have a car and you don't really know how everything's working in the car, the mechanical parts and the engine, etc. All you need to know is how to drive the car, how to stop, how to accelerate, um, how to steer. So those would be the attributes that you're really worried about. So and you don't really know how everything else works. And so this is the same thing. So J-frame, this class, it keeps all the things of how to draw the window under the hood. You don't know how that's happening. All you need to do is give it the title, the width, and the height, and boom, it creates it for you. It does all the hard work for you. So those are the attributes of the window. And so we have, so we create an instance of JFrame so that we can create this window. And then we have different methods on page 333 that control the attributes. So the methods are the ones that you're going to use to set the title, the width, and the height. So these are what you see at the very top of page 333. You have a string. So JFrame, you pass it a string. This is used when an object of type JFrame is instantiated. So you're creating a new window, you're instantiating a window, and you're specifying the title of your window. So the title of this window would be rectangle. Then when you want to set the size of the window, you would use the method called set size. And you're going to pass it the width and the height of the window. And like I said earlier, it's in pixels. So here we would call, so here's an example of how they instantiate a window. So you say JFrame. So JFrame is the class. My window is just the name of the object. And so this can be anything that you want to call it. And we would say JFrame my window equals new JFrame. So this creates your window. Then you would say this creates a window without a title. If you want a window with a title, just say JFrame my window equals new JFrame. And then in quotes, you give it the title that you want. And that title is going to be right here. It would be this title right here. Okay. Then you have to also call set size. So you would say my window dot set size, and then you would give it the size of the window. It sets the width of the window to 400 pixels, and it sets the height to 300 pixels. So this is the first argument. This is the second argument. It's expecting this to be the width and this to be the height. So if you instantiate a window without a title, you can set a title later on by calling the method set title. So you would say my window dot set title and then set the title of the window. We also have the method set visible. So this method is to display the window in the program. If the value of B, so the Boolean here, B, is true, the window will be displayed on the screen. So my window dot set visible true. After this statement executes, the window will be shown during program execution. So what that means is that you want to instantiate the window, you want to set the title, you want to set the width and the height. At some point you'll add, a text box and labels and buttons and etc. And then you'll decide, okay, well, I'm ready to make my window visible. And I'm trying to see if there's an example. Yes. So if you look at page 342, there's a example of a Java program to create a window and place 4 labels on it. And so we're on page 342. And I think, oops, let me see if I can pull up. Um, show you that page because it's just easier to show you an example. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 342. Okay, so we haven't talked about this yet, but to be able to use this, we're going to import this package, the swing package. We'll talk about that in a second. So in this example, they've actually created some constants, the width of 400 and the height of 300. All right, so here, what I wanted to show you is we actually in main, here's where so they've created a method, and we haven't gone over how to create methods yet, but they've created a method called rectangle program 2. They've set the title to this. Then they said length equals new J label. Okay, so there's some labels which we haven't talked about yet. But here's the set visible. So after they do a bunch, they add some labels, they add some things to the pane, which we'll talk about in a minute. Then they said, okay, now it's time to set this to visible to go ahead and show it. So at some point you have to make it visible. Otherwise it's not going to show the window. And then we have a method called set default close, close operation. So this method is a method to determine the action to be taken when the user clicks on the window closing button. So you have your little X to close the window. Choices for the parameter operations are the name constants, exit on close, hide on close, dispose on close, and do nothing on close. So these are our choices to put right here to send to set default close operation. So if we look at this example that we were just looking at a second ago, oops, pressing escape too many times. Here is this exit on close. So when they click on the little X, it will actually close and exit the window. But you have other choices like we saw. You could hide the window. You could do nothing, which that would, I don't know why you would want to do that. The name constant exit on close is defined in the class JFrame. The last 3 name constants are defined in the javax.swing window constants. So here's an example of how they called the method and they passed it this constant. So when we do exit on close, it actually closes the window and it terminates the program when the user clicks the window closing button. So it terminates the entire program when that X is clicked. Now, I don't remember what dispose on close mean, but I'm thinking that dispose will just dispose of the window, but not exit the whole program. It sounds like what that does. So it gets rid of the window, but does not exit the program. And then hide would just be like hide the window, make it like invisible, and then you can make the window visible again. So there are two ways to create a window. The first way is to declare the object of type frame and then instantiate the object. Then you would use various methods to manipulate the window, like the method to set the height and the width and the title, etc. The second way would be to create the class containing application program by extending the definition of class JFrame and utilizing the mechanism of inheritance. So let's look at this. Let's look at both of these ways right here. So the way that we just looked at right now in this example that's on page 342 is that we're actually extending JFrame. So we're not doing the first way where we go JFrame window equals new JFrame, whatever. That would be like this first method. The example that we just looked at was the second method. So oh, here it is. So looking here, we have public class. This is the name of the class, rectangle program 2, extends JFrame. So this is the second way that you can create an object of the class JFrame. So we extend JFrame, then we have a method, public rectangle program 2, same name as the class. And then we set everything here. We set the title, the length, and all that stuff that we want to set. And then in main, we say rectangle program 2. So this is the name of our class, rectangle program 2. We create some object and say new rectangle program 2. So PowerPoint. So this is creating the class. So we're creating just a whole program, the whole class that contains the application program. So the actual application, like this program is just going to be a window, extends the class JFrame, and then it uses the mechanism of inheritance, which means that it inherits all of the JFrame features. Content pane. So the content pane is the inner area of your window. It's below the title bar, inside the border. So anything that's inside below the title is what we call the content pane. So in the content pane is where you're going to put your labels and your text boxes and your buttons. So to access the content pane, you're going to declare a reference variable of type container, and you're going to use the method get content pane of class JFrame. So again, let's look at the example that we just had up just a second ago. Right here, we have container pane equals get content pane. So this right here, now we've created, we're getting access to the inside part of the window, and now we can change the attributes of the inside of the window by using the methods set layout, add, set this, actually set size is actually for the whole window, set visibles for the whole window. But this pane right here is, so here we're adding length L, and length L is a label. We're adding width L, and width L is also a label. So these are going to be two labels. One label is going to get the input, the length, and the other label is going to get the width. And this label here is going to be used to show you the area, the calculated area, and the calculated perimeter. So here we're saying add a label, add a label, add another label, add another label. So we're adding 4 labels. And the labels actually are right here. So the labels, we say length L. So length L equals new label. And the label is going to say enter the length. And then width label is going to say enter the width. And this label is going to say area. And this label is going to say perimeter. And then we have a constant here, right? Meaning we're going to right align the word perimeter area. The strings are going to be right aligned on the label. Okay, so let me minimize this again. So these are the methods of class container. So remember, container is the inside of the window. This is a method to add an object to the pane. And the objects, again, are going to be your text boxes, your labels, and your buttons for right now. Those are your objects: text boxes, labels, buttons. This is the method to set the layout of the pane. And we just saw that just a second ago. We saw that the way that they did the layout, it was a new grid layout, 4x1. So we'll see what that looks like in just a second. So class J label. Labels are objects of a particular class type. Class J label is used to create labels. And labels, they can be used for two reasons. One, you can use a label to say, like, to put it next to a text box and tell the user what to enter. But you can also use a label to show output. So on the label itself, you could show output versus putting it in a text box, because text boxes can be changed by the user. Labels cannot be changed by the user. Labels have the following attributes. So these are the things that you can change in a label. You can change the title of the label, the width, and the height. To create a label, you're going to instantiate an object of type JLabel, and you're going to modify the attributes of that label. So these are the things that we can do to JLabel. So we have JLabel, we can pass it a string. So here we have JLabel. This is the class. This is the object. Oops, go back. And then we say here this right here, when we use new, we're instantiating the object. We're saying new length L equals new JLabel. And then this is what the label is going to contain. Here we're doing the same thing, except we're telling it where to align the text. So we're saying right align the text. So it's going to right align it. The options that we have is left align, right align, and center. Then we have JLabel. So these are different ways that you can instantiate your JLabel. Another option that you have is that your label can have an icon. So you construct a label with both text and an icon, and the icon is going to be on the left of the text. So you have icon and then text. And you can create a label that just has an icon. Doesn't have to have text, and you don't have to align it. So these are the different ways that you can create a label, and you're going to decide you're only going to pick one of them. So how do you decide? So if you're wanting just to say, hey, enter a test grade, then you're just you can just use this one right here, J label, pass it the string, enter a text grade. And that's going to align it to the left. Automatically, everything's aligned, left aligned. But let's say that you want those words to be centered on your label, then you're going to choose this one. If you're wanting to add an icon to go with that label, then you'll use that one. If you're just wanting to have an icon, you'll use that one. So you have these options, and you have to think about how you want to design your window, and then you'll decide which one to use. Okay, then we have the class J text field. So the text field is the area where the user gets to enter the input. The text fields belong to the class J text field. To create a text field, you're going to declare a reference variable of type J text field, and you're going to instantiate the object, just like you did your label, exactly like that. These are some of the methods that we can use with J text field. So for J text field, we can pass it an integer. It constructs the constructor to set the size of the text field. So this is going to allow you to say how big you want your text field. You can construct to initialize the object with the text specified by string. So, sometimes when you're inputting information into a form online, and let's say like birthday, and it says to enter your birthday, in the area where you're going to enter your birth date, it has already an example of how the birth date should be formatted. So if you want to enter month, MM / day, DD / and then it'll usually have like Y, 4 Ys for year, I think. And so you'll have that to show you how you want it formatted. And then the user just clicks on that and can erase it, and then they can enter their birth date. So that's where you would put a string in the text field, just to give them an example of what to enter. Here are some other ways that we can, this is another way that you can instantiate a text field. You can send both. You can tell it the string and how big you want the field to be, the size of the text field. And then you can use the methods. So after you create the text field, after you've done this, and you've done J text field 1 equals new J text field and this, then you can change the text if you want. So you can say set text, that would change the text of your field. You can do get text, so you can grab what the user has entered. You're always going to need to use get text when the user inputs a value. Set editable. If the value of Boolean variable is B is false, the user cannot type in the text field. In this case, the text field is used as a tool to display the result. So you can display an output on a text field if you set this to false, editable to false. And then you have add action listener. So add action listener is it's like, for example, like for a button, when you click a button, you're like listening for the action, What's the action that you're listening to? You're listening for a click of a button. So we have the same thing for text boxes. The method to register a listener object to a JText field. Oh, excuse me. Then we have the class J button. So J button would actually be when we press the button, we would do something like calculate or clear. Maybe you want to clear the whole window, or you want to calculate, you want to next go to the next window. And then the same techniques that we use for J label and J text field, we're going to use for J button. So J button is a class. That means you would say J button, button exit would be the object name equals new J button. So when you say new J button, you have different ways that you can instantiate that button. So these are three different ways. You would pick one of these to make the button. So you can make the button with an icon. That would be the first one. You can make a button with a string, like to say the word exit, or you can make a button that has an icon and a string. So for example, if you've ever seen a button that has an arrow to go to the next, maybe has the word next and a little arrow, then they would have used this right here. You can set the text to the button. So that would be maybe you created a button with a text and you want to change the text of it. You can get the text that that button contains and action listener. Action listener, what's the action that we're waiting for? It's pressing the button. So what did the user do? It's like you're waiting, and because you don't really know when the button's going to be pressed, because you have a window and the user can be at any text box at any time entering values, and they can press that button at any time. So action listener is just a method that sits there and waits until that button is pressed. And then once it's pressed, we'll look and see what we do with, like, we decide what happens next. What do we want to happen? What do we want to happen when that button is pressed, or what do we want to happen when something's entered into a text box? So we do this with handling an event. Action events are events created by J button. So when J button is clicked, an event happens. Event listener, object that receives messages when J button is clicked. So we're going to create an event listener. And the event listener is going to wait. And once that button is clicked, then it will know, and then we'll decide what to do. In Java, you have to register the listener. So here is the name of the class for an action listener. That's the name of the class. It handles action event. We have to use this package. So we have to import java.awt.event. It's a special type of class. It's an interface class, and it must contain the action performed method. So here is a program that contains 1, 2, 3, 4 labels, 1, 2, 3, 4 text boxes, 2 buttons, calculate button and the exit button. We can press X to exit, and it would just exit the whole program. And when we created the window, we created it with a little icon and a string. So there's no icons here, no icons in our buttons, but there is a little icon right there. So this is the rectangle program. And the final rectangle program is on page. And this is the program this is what you want to use to create your program for this lab, is this example. So the final program I believe starts on page 352. Yeah. So if you look at page 352, let me pull that up here so you can see it. So before page 352, the book goes through and it shows you creating an empty window, creating a window with just the labels, adding the text boxes. So it kind of goes step by step, adding the buttons. And then it has the complete program. So this is page 352. It says the complete program to calculate the perimeter and the area of rectangle. So this has all the pieces. And this is the example that you want to use because you're going to create your own window that has text boxes and labels and buttons. So looking at this, again, this is creating, we're extending the J-frame class. And remember what that means is that this window is the application. Okay, so when you, because it's the whole application, when you're done, when you exit, it quits the application. So I wanted to show you, I want to show you a text field. So here's a text field of size 10. So this is how big the text field is going to be. And so the number that you want to put there is just depending on what you're expecting the user to enter. So if you want the user to enter, let's say, their first name, then you think, well, somebody's first name maybe won't be larger than, let's say, 20 characters. And so you would make this 20 right here when they could enter 20 characters. So this right here, length TF, let's go back over here. Let's just look at this one. So we have length TF is, oh, I'm recording, guys. Can you give me a minute? I'm recording, baby. Length TF is an object of J text field, of the class J text field, length TF. So then here we say length TF equals new J text field of size 10. So here's where we create the 4 text fields. And then here are the buttons. Here's where they create the buttons. So this button is created and it's going to show the word calculate. And then here is where we create a handler. So for the calculate button. So CB handler, so let's go back and look at what CB handler is. There we go. So calculate button handler. So we have CB handler, which is a calculate button handler. And so this here is the EB handler is for the exit button, it's the exit button handler. Calculate button handler, exit button handler. And then here we're doing EB handler equals new exit button handler. And then we're adding an action listener. So adding the action listener, all that does is just waits until something happens to that exit button. We're setting a title to the window. Here's where we get the content pane, the grid layout. Here's where we're adding. It says add the label, add the text box, 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 add the calculate button, add the exit button. We set the width of the window, we make it visible, and we exit the whole program, the whole application on close. Okay, so this is calculate button handler. So the calculate button handler is something that we create on our own, and it implements the action listener. So what this is doing here is we're telling the program what is it that we want to do when we click on that calculate button. What's going to happen? Well, that's up to you because you're the one who's saying what to do with the text boxes and what to do with the data that's in the text boxes. So what this program is doing is that it's getting what's in the length text box, it's getting what's in the width text box, and it's going to multiply those two values together, get the area, and it's going to take that area and it's going to add it to the area text field, and it's going to display it. I'm not really sure where it's going to display it. Take a look. Oh, right here. Sorry. So this, where it says area right here, this is going to be empty. So you enter 25, you enter 15, you click calculate, and then it calculates it and puts it here, the area, and it calculates the perimeter and puts it here. So this method here is where you're coding what's going to happen with what the data that they enter. And then for exit button, it's just really simple. You're just going to say system.exit. And that's it. This 0 right here, it just means that you're exiting and there's not a problem. There's just some system.exit. You can pass it different numbers. And if another program is calling this program, it can look at the number that you pass it and say, oh, there was an error. It just kind of tells you where the error was. Don't worry about that right now. So we're just always going to pass it 0, which means that we ended the program okay. So exit button handler implements action listener, and then action performed, and then we pass it the action, the event, and then inside you just put what it's doing. In the main program, all you're doing is you're creating the rectangle object, and this is the name of the class that you created, the rectangle program. So it shows you an example of that program. So what I'd like you to do first is enter this program, this whole program, and make sure that it calculates the area and the perimeter for you. And then for your assignment, you're going to be creating a program that takes some test grades or some grades, and each grade has different weights, and it calculates the person's grade depending on the grades entered. So it's going to have some labels just like this and some input, but it's going to have more input than just two input text boxes. It's going to have a calculate button and exit button. So your calculate method will look just like this. Your exit button will look just like this. It's just the stuff inside here is going to be different. So this stuff here is what you're going to change. All right, so let me see. I probably talked a lot about what's already in this PowerPoint. No. So this is a different example, In this example, the temperature conversion program is on page 355. I'm not going to go through this whole example. You can take a look at it. It's just using labels, fields, and buttons. In this particular program, you just have the user can enter the temperature in Celsius and it converts it to Fahrenheit, or they can enter it in Fahrenheit and converts it to Celsius. Like this. Okay, so this is where we're going to stop. I wanted to show you to be able to do this program. This is the program that you're going to be doing is creating a GUI application. And to be able to do your assignment, you have to close this out. You have to be able to create this program using another compiler that's not the online compiler. So the online compiler is not going to allow you to use to create a GUI application. And so I posted here a link that takes you, go ahead and click on it. It takes you here and it gives you the steps on installing Eclipse. So it says, first you're going to download the Eclipse installer and you're going to click here to download that. You're going to start the installer, Eclipse installer. It's going to look like this. Then it's going to ask you what to install, what package. You're going to choose this very first. Once you download this here and you say run, it's going to give you this, and you're going to choose the very first option. The first option is the Eclipse IDE for Java developers. This is all you need right here. Okay. If in the future you're taking a C++ class, you would download this one. PHP developers. So after you choose this option, then it says select your installation folder. So you're going to tell it where you want it to install, and you can just let it install in the folder that it chooses, and you click install, and that's it. So it's really simple. The only step that you have to do is just this here, download this. Everything is pretty much done for you. You click run, choose this, and you're good to go. And then I added on, so if you look at chapter 6, under lessons and videos, this video right here is some video that I found from some guy, and he goes through, he uses Eclipse specifically, which is what I liked about it. And he goes through and does a GUI tutorial, just like your first GUI project using Eclipse. So if you'd like, you can watch that and follow him and, follow his instructions on doing that. Or if you feel pretty comfortable using Eclipse, then you can just type in the program, exactly the area in the perimeter program that starts on, I forgot what page that was now, sorry, on page 352. Then there's this video on object-oriented programming, and I'd like you to watch this video before the next video that I post. So the video that I'm making right now, I'm going to post here, and then I'm going to post a video that talks about object-oriented programming. And it's really important that you learn and you watch that video and you understand what is object-oriented programming. Why do we have object-oriented programming? Why is it important? I really like this is like a 5-minute video. I really like it. The instructors, it might be a little bit difficult to understand, but just really makes a really nice point with the pictures about like just an abstract view was object-oriented programming. Okay. All right, guys. Email me if you have any questions, if you have any problems installing Eclipse. I don't, it's been a while since I installed it myself, but you can email me and I might be able to help you. Also, don't forget that we have under the discussion boards, there's a discussion where students have been posting questions, and there's some students that just installed Eclipse this semester, and they can also help you with that. All right, you have a good day, a good week, and I'll see you in the next video.